November 23rd, 2017, Chester, Virginia, Thanksgiving Day. Grace Gattis, the director of youth ministries at the local Lutheran church, was seething. His wife, stepdaughter, and her boyfriend were at his house for the holiday, and it was more than Chris could bear. He didn't like house guests, especially his wife's children. For days he had demanded, no, ordered his stepdaughter and her boyfriend to leave. When they didn't, Chris snapped, grabbed a gun, and shot all three of them dead. But why would a man known as a great guy commit such a brutal act? And how could he claim self-defense after executing three unarmed people? This is the story of the tragic murders of Jeanett, Candy, and Andrew. This is Grace Gattis, Faith and Fury. Hey, y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Podorf. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in Albania.
Albania.
Yes, and see if I can get through this one.
Okay.
Mirase erede, mirase erede, mirase erede.
Very nice.
There you go.
I have to stop for a second.
Uh-oh.
Because you said, welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.
Every time we watch Sunday Night Football, there's a voiceover guy, and whenever he talks, Rob mimics him. Sorry, I couldn't even get that word out. Mimics him through every single ad that he does. And when you just said, welcome to Hitched to Homicide, you sounded just like him. So I'm calling you out for it.
Sunday Night Football.
That's exactly it.
Well.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to subscribe to Hitched to Homicide. Then like, rate, and review the podcast so others who, like you, love true crime can also find us.
Yep.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you want true crime with us all the time, please join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws. Mm-hmm. Go to Facebook and type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, and you're in. Go join.
Yes.
I post photos and other information in there as well. It's a great group of folks. We just love them so much.
They're funny.
You can also find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And we also have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee.
Please do.
He drinks it every single episode.
I need coffee.
Oh, my gosh. Maybe it'll keep him from doing the announcer voice guy.
No, to just make my voice much more deeper and enunciated.
The moment you said that, I was like, hey, that's the guy from Sunday Night Football.
Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
That's what it sounded like. Just telling you now.
Okay.
You can also send us a text. The link to that is also at the top of the show notes. It says, send Chris and Rob a text. I can't even talk today.
It's all right.
Send Chris and Rob a text. I want to share one. This one is from Santa Rosa, California. Love, love, love your podcast. You are the best storyteller. Thank you so much. Would you consider doing Richard Allen Davis? His kidnap and murder of a 12-year-old girl was in my hometown. Well, thank you, Santa Rosa, California, and I put it on the list.
There you go. Perfect.
Before we get started today on a Thanksgiving murder, I'm going to do 2 Thanksgiving murders in a row.
Okay.
So if you're traveling for Thanksgiving and you want to save 2 of them up as you drive to see your relatives, and I tell you about stories where somebody commits homicide with their relatives. I don't know if that's a good idea. Maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Before we get started, let me thank some sources. The Richmond Times-Dispatch, ealvinsmall.com, CBS Channel 6 in Richmond, Virginia, Find a Grave, ABC Channel 7 in Chicago, Facebook, Channel 12 in Richmond, Virginia, the podcast Southern Fried True Crime, and the Washington Post.
Nice. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Jeanett Lynn Lau Gattis is born in Fort Hood, Texas on July 16, 1959. Her parents are Art and Wilma Lau.
Wilma.
Wilma. She has 4 sisters, so 5 girls total. Leslie, Darlene, Judith, and Pam. The family moved from Texas to Virginia when she's just a little girl, and she graduated from Colonial Heights High School in Colonial Heights, Virginia, which is just south of Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Her family is Lutheran and very tied to their German roots. She would graduate, among other kids, with a boy named Christopher Raymond, or Chris Gattis.
Okay.
Then Jeanett went to the College of William and Mary, where she got a BA in BA, a bachelor's in business administration. And since I graduated with a degree in advertising and public relations from the School of Journalism, I always used to say that I got a BA in BS. And I'm putting it to good use because now I have a podcast and I write books. There you go.
There you go.
Jeanett meets Holger Kunze, very German, who moved to the United States in 1971 from Germany to Colonial Heights, Virginia, with his parents.
Okay.
So she has a strong German heritage, and he's actually from Germany. It's a match made in heaven.
There you go.
Jeanett and Holger get married and have 2 children, Candice, who goes by Candy, in 1986, and a son named Adam, who was born in 1988. Holger moved the whole family to Singapore in 1993. When the kids were very young.
Okay.
And Holger is an accomplished guy. He did all of this for Nestle Nutrition. He established the Asian Regional Medical Nutrition Office in Singapore. He supported and coordinated the acquisition of the Mead Johnson adult nutrition business and led and managed the medical nutrition businesses for Novartis in 17 Asian countries.
Wow. He was an underachiever.
He's very much an underachiever.
Man.
So Candy and Adam grew up in Singapore.
Okay.
And they're really world travelers at a very young age. And both of them are going to hang on to this travel bug for the rest of their life.
Okay.
7 years later, in 2000, Jeanett and Holger divorce. Now, he stayed behind in Singapore until 2007, and she came back home to Virginia, where her family was living. Nothing wrong with coming back to where your support system is, right?
Right.
Jeanett took a job in 2002 with Napier Real Estate, where she worked in the accounting department. Jeanett's known as like this very bubbly, super personable girl. She's funny, outgoing, talkative. She loved her kids. And now she's a single mom. And if you're not a mama bear before you become a single mother, you're really a mama bear after.
Oh, yeah.
And she was. It's not like Holger could take the kids every other weekend. He's across the globe.
Sure.
Not that he wasn't close to his children, but it's harder for the kids to see their dad on a regular basis. And her children were her entire world. 4 years later, in 2004, Candy graduates from high school in Virginia and heads off to college at Radford University in Radford, Virginia. Then in 2007, Jeanett goes to her 30-year high school reunion. I went to Rob's 30 high school reunion. It was one of the very first things we did when we started going out.
Yep.
Oh, wait, maybe. Were we engaged then?
No, that was before.
It was before we were engaged. Yeah. And all the girls were after Rob still. Just saying. I got some dirty looks that night. I'm like, sorry.
It's not true.
It's so true. It's so true. She goes to her 30-year high school reunion, and who does she see? But Chris Gattis. Chris is born on July 28th, 1958, in Petersburg, Virginia. His parents are James Earl, made me think of James Earl Jones,
I know.
and Elena Gattis. He has 2 brothers, Alan and Dale, and a sister, Glennis.
Okay.
3 boys and a girl. That girl never had a shot at going out or ever having a date when she was in high school. Chris went to Colonial Heights High School and then to Virginia State University, and his family owns Lighthouse Furniture and Appliance on Sycamore Street in Petersburg, Virginia. He marries a girl named Carla in 1980, and these 2 will be married for 18 years before they divorce. They never have children. 18 years, no kids. Don't know if he didn't want them or she didn't want them, or maybe neither of them wanted them.
Right.
But then he remarries less than a year after his first divorce. But this marriage will also end in a divorce in less than 4 years. in 2003, and they too remain childless. But in 2007, at the 30-year high school reunion, Jeanett sees Chris sees Jeanett across the crowded room. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Some enchanted
Exactly.
evening.
But these two hit it off. And a year later, on August 8th, 2008, Jeanett and Chris get married.
Okay.
Now, Candy, her daughter, who is now 22, is her maid of honor at the wedding. And Chris has now 2 stepchildren, even though he's never had children before.
Mm-hmm.
Chris is still working in the family business at the furniture and appliance store until 2013, when he becomes the director of youth ministry at Grace Lutheran Church in Chester, Virginia.
All right.
Now, Chester is just 12 miles north of Petersburg, where the furniture store is, and about 8 miles from Colonial Heights. I have absolutely no idea what his calling was or his path was to this position as director of youth ministry, where he was a minister coordinator for middle school and high school kids.
Yes.
But he's never had kids before.
And he doesn't like kids.
And I don't think he likes them.
Makes sense to me. Jeez.
Now, I don't know what you know about the Lutheran Church, but this church is a part of the Missouri Synod. And if you're not up on your Lutheran rules, there's an evangelical Lutheran church in America known as the American Synod, and the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, and then the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Unless it's a leap year, and then you have... Jeez.
And the Lutherans are a Protestant church that identify with the theology of Martin Luther and the Book of Concord. And Martin Luther started the 16th century Protestant Reformation by nailing a piece of paper with 95 revolutionary opinions onto the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. I looked it up so you don't have to.
Had no idea. Wow.
But I did look this up as well. You don't have to go to seminary school to work as a director of youth ministries in a Lutheran church.
Okay.
And that's what he was doing, working at the church. And Jeanett is very involved in the church as well. And the Lutheran Church has really strong German roots, obviously.
Right.
That's where Martin Luther was nailing these the protests to the door.
Sure.
Chris and Jeanett, on the outside, are a very well-respected couple. Chris was known to his neighbors on Dogwood Ridge Court as the kind of guy who would do anything for you. His neighbors thought he was just the best, and the church thought he was amazing as a youth pastor.
Isn't it always that way, though?
It's always that way.
When you see, people being interviewed on TV after, a serial killer or a murder or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I lived next to him for 20 years and he just seemed like a nice guy.
He was the nicest guy. He was the nicest guy.
Yeah.
But before he takes this job in 2013, Chris has a couple of run-ins with the law, as my grandmother used to say. In 2010, Chris is charged with public intoxication. He paid a $25 fine and the charges were dropped. And after this, Chris swore off drinking publicly.
Yeah.
Behind closed doors, he was a big drinker. And I think, this is just my opinion, I think he was a mean drunk. If you've ever known a mean drunk, it's the worst.
Yeah.
On September 5th, 2012, he gets into it with the newspaper delivery boy's father, Kevin DeFord. The 19-year-old son of Kevin threw a newspaper onto Chris's driveway, and when they make the circle in the cul-de-sac on Dogwood Ridge Court, Chris throws the paper back into the car through the driver's window, hitting Kevin, the dad, in the head.
Why did he do that?
Nobody knows.
Huh.
And Kevin's 19-year-old son, 19-year-olds, they got a lot of testosterone.
Yeah.
He gets out of the car. And he's like, you want a piece of me, man? Why'd you do that kind of thing? He confronts Chris. And Chris pulls a box cutter on this guy.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Who then puts his hands up and backs away. Like, okay, dude,
Yeah.
I got it. You don't want the paper.
Yeah. We'll cancel your subscription.
We'll cancel the paper. But his dad, Kevin, does call the police. Now, Chris's attorney got the charges dismissed, and Chris apologized to Kevin and his son and paid a $1,000 fine, but I also read that it was less than a $1,000 fine.
Okay.
It was like assault and battery, but they got it dismissed.
Gotcha.
But he wasn't just an asshole to the paper boy. Over the next few years, 7 calls will be made to the police over an 8-year period. And this is to his home between him and his wife.
Wow.
These two are only married for 9 years. So maybe the first year was okay, but after that, on average, the police were called once a year for domestic disturbances.
Wow.
And one of these was classified as a domestic disturbance with a weapon. No charges are ever filed. Jeanett never files charges on her husband, and none of it went on the books officially until there was a weapon involved.
So typical battered wife syndrome.
I mean, she just keeps letting him get away with it.
Yeah.
And I really don't think Chris liked his wife's children, Candy and Adam, and I believe that he wanted to be the center of Jeanett's world, and he didn't like her giving attention to her grown children. I mean, I'm sure he's like, they're out of the house, they're gone.
Yeah.
And every time I read through these notes and stuff, this is a guy who's around middle school and high school kids.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Wow.
But thankfully, Jeanett's 2 children are grown. They're out of the house. Candice, who goes by Candy, she's a world traveler. She got her doctorate in physical therapy from Radford University in 2016 and then went to work in Boise, Idaho. Then in 2017, she moved to Grants Pass, Oregon to work for Therapeutic Associates of Grants Pass.
Okay.
But then a month later, she takes a job as a traveling physical therapist for AMN Healthcare based out of Astoria, Oregon. She also has a little dog named Toby. There are all kinds of pictures of her with Toby.
Okay.
Very cute. Then, while doing continuing education for physical therapists, Candy meets Andrew Butthorn. Andrew Ellis Butthorn is born on March 18th, 1981 in Olympia, Washington, to Bill and Nancy. He has an older brother named Jess.
Okay.
He graduated from Olympia High School in 1999 and then went to Marymount in Arlington, Virginia. And then he went home to Washington State where he got his doctorate in physical therapy at the University of Puget Sound.
Okay.
That's such a beautiful area up there. I don't know why he'd ever want to leave and go anyplace else.
Yeah.
He loved playing the guitar. Sounds familiar. Riding his bike. Sounds familiar. He liked to beat his dad in golf. Thought that was funny.
Yeah.
He was a history buff. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
He was also a history major. And he loved beer and coffee and was a connoisseur of both.
Well, I like the coffee.
What can I say? What can I say?
Not a big drinker, but I love my coffee.
You like dark beer.
Yeah, I do. I love Guinness. That's good stuff. I have it every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But he worked as a PT in Eugene, Oregon, home of the University of Oregon. And what film was made there, Rob?
Animal House.
Food fight.
Animal House.
We love that movie. Can you tell I'm Gen X? I love that movie.
It's a go-to for us.
Candy and Andrew started dating in March of 2017, and by September, they had moved together to Virginia as travel physical therapists.
Okay.
And traveling physical therapists and nurses, they make great money.
Oh, yeah.
But when these two come to Virginia, they stay at least for a bit with Chris and Jeanett. They were only supposed to be living with Candy's mom and Chris for a couple of days, but that turned into a couple of weeks. And Chris had agreed to a couple of days, but he hadn't agreed to a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Now, Andrew found a job at a nursing home in Winchester, Virginia, and I believe that he had actually moved out.
Okay.
But I think Candy was still at the house with her mom, which makes sense when my daughter's in town.
Yeah.
I always want her around.
Of course.
But one thing is for sure, by Thanksgiving of 2017, Andrew and Candy were at her mom and Chris's house for the holiday. And I did read that they were staying in Virginia until they moved on to their next assignment in Arizona. Now, also joining them for Thanksgiving is Chris's nephew. Hang on a second. Let me back up.
Okay.
Chris knows they're leaving.
Right.
They're going to their next assignment in Arizona. They're not staying in Virginia forever.
Right.
So I just want to make that point.
Right.
But Chris has also invited his nephew to come to Thanksgiving. And I don't know which of Chris's siblings this nephew belongs to, but a few days before Thanksgiving, he comes to stay with Chris, Jeanett, Candy, and Andrew. So a whole house full of people.
Okay.
And you know what? When I have a house full of people for the holidays, I love it.
It's fun.
I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, Chris didn't like people staying with him any day of the week, even if they're his stepchildren or his stepchild's boyfriend, or it's the holidays. It's just well known that Chris didn't like Jeanett's kids coming to visit for more than a couple of days.
So I wonder if he's just like antisocial, or he just doesn't like kids, or what's
He's the youth minister. He doesn't like kids.
I know. Makes no sense.
I mean, he's supposed to be, I'm sure he's like counseling some of these middle school and high school kids. And that's where all the angst is.
Yeah.
That's where everybody thinks the world's falling apart is middle school and high school.
Right.
And they got this guy to guide them.
Gosh.
2 days before Thanksgiving in 2017, Chris tells his wife that he wants Candy and Andrew out. I want them out of the house.
Wow.
But I guess Chris had this history of pitching a fit. But I know of no mothers who would put their children out on a holiday because the stepdad was being an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jeanett did not make the kids leave. And they are grown kids, but in a mother's eyes, they're always going to be your children. They always will be.
Sure.
On this same day, Tuesday, November 21st, Chris is drinking because when you don't get your way, apparently that's what you do. He's drinking, and the rest of the family, including his nephew, are playing a board game. And isn't that what the holidays are for? Playing games with your family, some Pictionary, a little Dutch Blitz.
Yep.
Or since we're talking about the Lutherans, some euchre.
There you go. Yeah. I every time we go to some of Chris's relatives' house, it's always euchre.
Euchre.
Everybody's playing euchre.
And nobody wants to be my partner because I always forget what trumps are. And if you play euchre, you're going to be like, oh, come on, Chris. Come on.
Yep.
But euchre was first called Juckerspiel by the Germans who brought it to the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But I digress.
Okay.
But the family's playing a board game. And Chris is instead drinking and sulking. Yeah. When somebody, my guess is that it was Candy, spilled her wine. Somebody spilled their wine.
Oh.
Chris came to the room, started yelling at Candy and Andrew, telling them he wanted them out. Get out. And Jeanett stood up and tried to calm him down. And he shoved her. And then he balled his fist like he was going to hit her.
Wow.
And this is when Chris's nephew, who has kept his name out of the media, so I'm just going to be calling him the nephew stepped in and kept Chris from hurting Jeanett.
Jeez.
And after this, Jeanett went and got Chris's gun. Now, maybe she thinks it's the only gun he owns, but it's not. She gives this gun to the nephew, and she tells him she's afraid that Chris is going to use it.
Gee whiz.
Now, what kind of life, what kind of husband do you have if you're worried your husband's going to use the gun?
Yeah.
In anger against somebody.
The only thing you get worried about me is I'm going to come down to the studio and play the piano too loud.
Turn it down. It's not true. It's not. I will say this. The studio is underneath the master bedroom. And when Rob works late at night and he's mixing something, he usually does it with the speakers, the wild ass speakers that we have in this house. We could go on tour, I think, y'all. But it'll get loud and then I'll have to be like, hey.
Pounding on the floor.
I'm trying to sleep up here.
Sorry.
We work it out. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But she's saying, take this gun. I'm afraid Chris is going to use it. Now, the nephew leaves the next morning, taking the gun with him. But Chris owned more than one gun, and it's not even yet Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Jeanett, on the other hand, has started filming Chris with her camera. When he starts to get out of hand and he starts to get belligerent, she starts filming him. So what do you think she's going to use that for?
Yeah.
That's going to come into play if she wants to divorce him,
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
Over the next 2 days, Chris gets angrier and angrier, and he just kept on drinking.
Not good.
On Thanksgiving morning, Andrew called his parents, the boyfriend, who were in Washington State, to wish them a happy Thanksgiving. He told his parents that he and Candy were planning to move to Yuma, Arizona for their jobs, and his parents were really happy. They were just thrilled about this because they were actually snowbirds, and they went to a home in Arizona in the winter.
Oh.
And he was really upbeat with his mom and his dad, even though Chris is being a grumpy Gus in the house.
Right.
And while Andrew is there for Thanksgiving, he actually paints the fence around the house. He tells his parents, it's been great. I actually painted the fence for him. Does that sound like somebody you want to leave?
Yeah.
I mean, if Rob and I got help in the backyard, we'd be like, hey, stay.
Exactly.
Want to stay a couple more days?
Yeah. I got some leaves out there that need to be raked up.
We can mulch the flower beds for winter. Come on. Come on now.
Let's have some fun.
Yeah, but he's like he wants him out.
Yeah.
But he painted a fence.
Okay.
Then at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving, Candy and Andrew were in the hot tub in the backyard. And Chris confronts them, wagging his finger at them, again telling them they had to leave. You have to leave now. That's what he tells them.
Good Lord.
He wanted them out now. And Jeanett comes running outside, and Chris is yelling, and he turns and he starts screaming at his wife. And all of this is recorded on a home surveillance camera outside. Rob's like, yeah, it was, because we have those everywhere.
I'm into surveillance cameras.
Rob will be out of town, and he'll be like, hey, thanks for taking the trash down to the road or down for the pickup. And I'm like, you're watching me. You can see me. Yeah. But after this altercation, Chris goes upstairs to the master bedroom where he can hear his wife and his stepdaughter talking shit about him out the window.
Yeah.
If it were my mother, I would tell her, pack your bags. You're getting out. We're all leaving. Let's just leave. Let's get out of here.
Right.
Finally, they think that Chris has gone to bed or passed out or whatever. But then he starts sending a series of text messages. At 9:40 p.m., he texts, quote, please stop threatening me. I'm so scared. Please leave me alone. I am in fear of my life. I feel you want to kill me. Please let me live, end quote.
Whatever.
1 minute later at 9:40, it gets better. Hang on.
Okay.
9:40 p.m., he texts, quote, I just want to live. Please, end quote. Which was followed by, quote, stop scaring me. I'm so afraid, with 6 exclamation points behind it. Then at 9:58 p.m., Chris texts, quote, you're hurting me, 4 exclamation points. And then at 10:10 p.m., quote, please don't come into my room to hurt me, end quote.
Okay, you're hurting me. He's texting.
He's texting. You're hurting me. What do you think he's trying to do?
Well, of course, yeah. He's doing his alibi.
Yeah, he's setting up his alibi.
Yeah.
It sucks, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, you should have thought this out a little bit more, buddy.
You should have listened to a few true crime podcasts.
Yeah, there you go.
At 10:27, he texted, quote, please don't come after me. Thanks, end quote. Thanks. Then at 10:30 p.m., quote, you want to hurt me. I'm so, all these O's, scared. You and Candy want to kill me, end quote.
Jeez.
At 10:48, Jeanett forwards the text to Chris's nephew who'd been staying with him, saying, quote, he's over the edge. We've left him alone. Will you send his last text? I think he's playing mind games, end quote. To which the nephew texts back, what in the world? Please be careful. I don't know what he's doing, but I think you two should stay somewhere else if you can.
Yeah.
Voice of reason, end quote.
Yep.
Then a few minutes later, the nephew writes, quote, this is a very strange message. I don't believe he's scared at all. I don't know why he would say that. I won't message him. For Candy, Adam, and your sake, I really think you two should stay somewhere else, end quote. So he said it twice now.
Sure.
Get out.
Yep. Like Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Then at 11:06, the nephew wrote to Jeanett, quote, the more I learn about my family on that side, the less I want anything to do with it, end quote. By 11:06, Chris had stopped sending texts. By 11:15, Chris has gone to his room and retrieved his .45 semi-automatic pistol. It's a Taurus, along with 3 fully loaded magazines.
Wow.
Then he walked back downstairs where the others are at the kitchen table playing a board game. He walks into the room and Candy hits the camera on her phone. She starts recording.
Right.
Chris first opened fire on his wife, Jeanett. He just starts shooting. He shot her 1 time in the back. Then he turned the gun on Candy, shooting her 7 times.
Good grief.
Then he turned the gun on Andrew, who for a split second hid behind a table, begging to be let go. Quote, "I will go out. I will leave," end quote. There are screams in the background as he's saying this.
Jeez.
Andrew bolts for the front door and is shot in the back and then shot 2 more times in the front yard in the stomach. Chris had emptied the magazine of all 11 rounds.
Good Lord.
He dropped 1 magazine in the kitchen floor and he had another in his pocket. After killing all 3 of them, he didn't call 911. He called his home alarm company and told them to send the police. He didn't say why he needed the police, just to send them. Now, I don't know if everybody's dead right off the bat, but they're just all lying there dying.
Oh, jeez.
Chesterfield County Police show up to Dogwood Ridge Court, where Chris Gattis was sitting on his front stoop with Andrew's body just 3 feet away from him. It is cold outside, and Andrew's body has steam coming off of it as he lays face up in the yard. Now, it's dark outside, and the officer comes to the front door. He's got his flashlight on, and all of this is on his body cam footage.
Right.
It's Officer N.C. Frazier who arrives first, and he sees him, and he looks at Chris and says, "What happened?" And Chris tells the police that Andrew had threatened him. And Officer Frazier tells Chris, "Lie face down," and he cuffs him.
Right.
Now, he didn't read him his Miranda rights.
Right.
He was detaining him as he attempted to get a better understanding of the situation.
Right.
And in an emergency situation, a suspect can be handcuffed and placed in, quote, investigative detention, end quote, prior to an officer reading a person his rights.
Right.
Officer Frazier calls for backup and goes to check on Andrew, lifting his shirt, checking for signs of life. And then he asks Christopher how many people were shot. And Chris tells him 3, 2 inside the house and 1 in the yard. He's not crying. He doesn't seem like he's in shock. He's very calm.
Mm-hmm.
Chris said that they were threatening him. Then the officer read him his Miranda rights, and the other officers are showing up and going in the house and shouting for whomever's in there to come out, hands up, because they didn't know if there was another person with a gun inside the house.
Right.
And Chris kept talking, saying, "They're probably all dead." Quote, "They all came after me," end quote. And even though he's been read his rights, Chris just keeps on flapping his gums.
Yeah.
The other officers are on the scene quickly as Officer Frazier tells them he has 1 detained and 1, quote, "be advised, he shot 3 people, 1 male subject on the ground with 2 gunshots to the stomach," end quote. Inside the house, the gun is just sitting on a table, just inside the door. And police find both Jeanett and Candy dead in the house, in the kitchen. Jeanett was shot once in the back. Candy shot multiple times. So if Jeanett was shot once and Andrew was shot 3 times, he's emptied the magazine. That means Candy got 7 shots.
Man.
She was shot 7 times in the back, chest, shoulder, and right thigh. So who do you think he was mad at?
Yeah.
He's mad at Candy.
Sure.
Police take evidence from the house, and they find the video on Jeanett's phone of the argument between him and Jeanett and Andrew and Candy. They find the video of him shooting everybody on Candy's phone.
Wow.
And they have the one video in the hot tub from the surveillance footage from the house.
Right.
They take Chris into custody and to the Riverside Regional Jail, and they charge him with 3 counts of murder 1 and 3 counts of using a firearm in the commission of a felony. Chris was held without bail in 2 different courts, and when he's in court the next morning, he wants to know why he's been in 2 different courts. But he murdered his wife and stepdaughter, so that case was heard in domestic relations court, and the murder of Andrew was heard in general district court.
Okay.
They place him on suicide watch following his arrest. Now, you must be wondering what the church is thinking.
Yeah.
He's the director of the youth programs at the Lutheran Church.
Sure.
Well, they suspended him without pay.
Right.
I guess it was a suspension instead of a firing until they knew all the facts.
Right.
They released a statement saying, quote, "The members of Grace Lutheran Church are deeply saddened by the loss of life last night as a result of 3 individuals being shot in Chester, and this tragedy included members of Grace Lutheran Church. Grace Lutheran Church has experienced many hardships over the years, but this heartbreak has its unique challenges, which is code for we've had bad stuff happen, but never one of our leaders commit homicide."
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of over the top.
Grace Lutheran Church asks for the prayers from our community as our congregation begins the process of addressing the grief being experienced by everyone involved, which is code for you don't have to beat us up over having a homicidal man as a youth pastor, because we're going to beat ourselves up for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just pray for us is what they're saying.
Yeah. We screwed up. Hopefully we can get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently nobody checked his criminal records for assault and battery or, public intoxication.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Amazing.
Adam, Candy's brother and Jeanett's son, who lives in California, he's actually an actor. I've seen his social media accounts. He's really done some cool stuff. But he's told about the murders, and he said he began connecting the dots after he was over the initial shock. Quote, "It's almost like I already knew what had happened and by whom. There was something deep down that was not surprising," end quote.
Wow.
So they knew that Chris hated their guts.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
And it's hard not to know, right? He didn't want him staying there.
Yeah.
Jeanett and Candy's funerals were both held at Grace Lutheran Church on December 2nd, 2017. Andrew's funeral was also held on December 2nd, but all the way across the country in Olympia, Washington. But all the camera work by Jeanett, Candy, and even the house cameras were a, quote, bounty of information, according to the prosecutor, Kenneth Chitty.
Right.
Chris's defense attorney, John Rockcharlie, some great names in here.
Yeah.
And pretrial hearings began on June 25th, 2018. And Chris's defense made a motion to dismiss the evidence of his incriminating statements made to Officer Frazier when he first arrived because they said he hadn't been given his Miranda rights.
However,
by the way, do you know why they are called Miranda rights?
I don't know who Miranda is. But...
Well, he's actually a person.
Oh, really?
1963, Ernesto Miranda was arrested for stealing money from an Arizona bank worker, and during questioning, he confessed to the robbery, kidnapping, and rape without being informed of his rights. And his attorney argued that he was under duress and that his confession shouldn't be admissible in court. And the Supreme Court in 1966 overturned Ernesto Miranda's conviction, holding the United States government could not use a defendant's statement at trial unless they knew their rights.
Wow.
And thus they were named after Ernesto, and now we have Miranda rights.
Wow. I did not know that.
So you can thrill your family with this little pearl of wisdom over Thanksgiving.
So was he set free then?
Yes. His conviction was overturned.
Wow.
Yeah. And not only did he rob this bank teller, he kidnapped her and he raped her as well.
Oh my gosh. And he was let go.
And he was let go because he was not given his rights.
Jeez.
So now Ernesto, Miranda, everybody gets their Miranda rights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's nothing that an officer of the law or victim hates more than having a criminal go free on a technicality.
Yeah.
And this is what his defense attorneys are saying. You didn't read him his Miranda rights. And even though he said, I shot him, there are 2 more inside, you can't use that. And this is what Chris's attorney saying to Judge T.J. Haller. They argued that, quote, in an emergency situation, a suspect can be handcuffed and placed in an investigative detention prior to a reading of their Miranda rights, end quote.
Right.
And that's exactly what Officer Frazier did.
Right.
He asked what happened, and as soon as he said, I shot him in self-defense, he put him in handcuffs. And then after he kind of got a few more details, then he read him his Miranda rights. But Chris kept flapping his gums. Remember me saying that?
Sure, yeah.
The judge ruled in the prosecution's favor. And at pretrial, the prosecution laid out the timeline of the days leading up to the murders all the way up to Thanksgiving night when Chris shot them all. The prosecution's theory, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out.
Yeah.
The theory is that Chris sent the text messages begging not to be killed or hurt as his alibi and evidence to show he was acting in self-defense. He wanted it to seem as if he feared for his own safety. And Chris's defense attorney said he admitted to killing all of them, Jeanett, Candy, and Andrew, but that he'd done it in self-defense. And then he showed photos of bruises on Chris's chest, saying that Jeanett had assaulted him on November 21st, 2 days before Thanksgiving. Okay, but you didn't shoot her 2 days ago, Chris.
Yeah.
And Chris's nephew was a witness to Chris losing his mind on Jeanett and balling up his fist to hit his wife.
Yeah.
He's the one who stepped in to stop him. So did the bruises actually come from his nephew? I mean, how hard could Jeanett hit him to cause a bruise, right?
Exactly.
And Jeanett gave Chris's gun to the nephew before he left the house because she's worried. And he took it. And I have to think that Jeanett thought that was the only gun in the house.
Right.
But the nephew left that morning. Dude, I would too. Why spend Thanksgiving in the middle of a family feud, right?
Yeah.
That's no fun.
Yep. I don't care how good the turkey is.
I don't care how good the apple pie is either.
Exactly. Now, if they had good cranberry with walnut, it's a different story.
Don't worry. I'm making your cranberry with walnuts for Thanksgiving.
All right. We're all good then.
We're all good.
All right. Go ahead.
Chris's defense attorneys said that after his anger built up over the next 48 hours, and they had to tell the court that Chris had tried to defuse the situation by asking Candy and Andrew to leave. And something I didn't tell you is that while he was texting his wife and Candy, he did text Andrew while he's saying, please don't hurt me, don't hurt me. He texted him, quote, "I'm sorry you stepped into a bad situation," end quote. So, I mean, to me, that's like you're admitting it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Don't hurt me. I'm sorry you're here.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, you weren't that sorry, Chris. You shot him as he ran away in the front yard.
Yeah.
You shot him and then shot him 2 times more.
Wow.
There was cell phone evidence that he yelled at both Candy and Andrew and Jeanett, and he was in a drunken rage when he was trying to throw them out of the house during the altercation at the hot tub. And according to his attorney, after Chris told him to leave when they were in the hot tub, Chris went upstairs and could hear Candy and her mother and Andrew saying disparaging things about him.
Wow.
And that, they say, is what provoked Chris into shooting up the family. It's not much of a defense.
Yeah.
Finally, Chris's attorney gets him to agree to take a plea deal. I mean, he had to be in that room with him going, Chris.
Yeah.
Dude, we don't have much here.
Yep.
You should take a plea.
Yep.
They didn't try an insanity plea either. His scheduled jury trial had been scheduled for November 7th and 8th, 2018.
Okay.
But on August 15th, 2018, 9 months after he gunned them down in cold blood, Christopher Gattis pleads guilty to 3 counts of murder 1, along with 1 count of a felony use of a firearm.
Okay.
He was sentenced to 100 years for each murder, with 45 years suspended on each to be conserved concurrently, and 3 years for the firearm felony. Okay. This is a total of 58 years, which coincidentally is how old he was when he killed his wife, his stepdaughter, and her boyfriend.
Apropos.
In Virginia, for homicide, you are required to serve 85% of your sentence for homicide before you can even breathe the word
parole. Yeah.
Which means Chris Gattis will draw his last breath in prison.
Yep.
After this sentence is handed down, Andrew's family, as well as Adam, Candy's brother, and Jeanett's son, were satisfied that justice had been served. They honestly wanted swift justice so they could all try to heal.
Sure.
And according to Adam, quote, he's going to live out the rest of his life in prison, and that's what we wanted, end quote. Christopher Raymond Gattis sits in the Keene Mountain Correctional Center in Oakwood, Virginia. His release date is set for 2068, when he will be 109. So I'm going to say he's not going to make it.
And if he does, I don't think he'll be able to get a job.
Yeah. But you have to wonder, because this guy's neighbors and people at church thought that Chris was just the nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
You know what? He was quick with the joker to light up your smoke. I mean, right? He was that guy.
Yep.
And I will say that the neighbors told the newspaper that they didn't sleep on Thanksgiving night because there was a body lying in the yard, in the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
A monster. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine being parents if your child was in his youth group?
Good grief.
That it's a public relations nightmare. It's a nightmare for that family. Lives lost. Yeah. I also read that Candy and Andrew were planning on getting married. They were absolutely, totally head over heels for each other. Mm. Couldn't wait to be together and spend the rest of their lives together.
So sad.
But Chris had to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
But that is the story of the youth minister murderer. And that's all I have to say about that. For nearly 7 years, Jane Doe has lived in the shadows, her past buried deep beneath layers of secrecy and silence. After completing more than was asked of her in her last assignment for the enigmatic Kaiwolf Project, Jane Doe vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies and unanswered questions. But now, as the specter of her past returns with a vengeance, Jane finds herself thrust back into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. When her former sins come knocking on her door, Jane is faced with an impossible choice: continue to hide in the shadows, or once again take up arms against the forces that threaten to tear apart the fabric of society. With enemies lurking around every corner and allies who may not be what they seem, Jane must rely on her wits, training, and her unyielding determination to survive. And while trust is a luxury she cannot afford, Jane must confront the truth about herself and her past. As the clock ticks, she realizes that the line between family, friend, and foe are razor thin, and in the end, the only person she can rely on is herself. Jane Doe 4 Charlotte is available September 24th, 2024. No name, no regrets, no mercy.
You know, it's always scary because there are people out there that they never show their true colors until they're, behind closed doors.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Thanksgiving, holidays can get contentious, among family members. And, everybody just keep your cool.
Yeah.
Just keep your cool. And if things start to get out of hand, say, I want to tell you a story.
Yeah, exactly.
This is how bad it can go.
It's just amazing that people can be that enraged and crazy for no reason at all.
That's selfish.
Yeah.
He just wanted them out of his house. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
It's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on a little bit and get away from that nuttiness to some really nuttiness to bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right, number one, I'm calling this No, You Don't Understand. And no, you don't understand.
This sounds like us having a discussion about something. Are you listening to what I'm saying?
A man confused about Ohio drug laws called the police department, demanding that officers return the small amount of marijuana they stole from him, per the Associated Press.
Oops.
WXIX Cincinnati reports the man told a Sharonville police dispatcher.
We know where Sharonville is.
Absolutely. In an expletive-laced call Tuesday that it's illegal to possess 100 grams, that's 3.5 ounces, of marijuana, and that the amount the officer seized was just 4 grams. And that's like 0.14 ounce, I guess. Sharonville police posted a recording of the call on their Facebook page. Yeah.
Even with the expletives?
Oh, yeah. And this is what it was. Hi, this is quote. Hi, I need to do a complaint about 2 Sharonville cops, the irate sounding man says in a call. They stole my effing weed last night. There's a slight pause after he speaks. And then the dispatcher calmly responds, quote, okay, let me have you talk to a supervisor.
This is above my pay grade.
Yeah. A Sharonville sergeant then takes over, at which point the caller says he'd been staying at a hotel when the theft took place.
Did he tell him which hotel?
I don't know. Quote, my wife had my effing weed in her purse and the mother effing cops took it. It was really good effing weed, unquote. The caller then gets increasingly upset as the sergeant tells him he's wrong about the legality of the amount he allegedly had and that he'll have to come down in person to file a complaint.
Oh, my gosh. Please tell me he didn't go.
Well, they didn't say that, but here comes the best part. The suburban Cincinnati department wryly noted on Facebook, and here's where it gets good, quote, now, people may get a bit in the weeds, so we would like to take the opportunity to clear the haze, unquote. Now, while some Ohio cities have decriminalized pot possession, it remains illegal in the state. Quote, to be blunt, recreational marijuana is still illegal per our state law. Here in Sharonville, Ohio, 100 grams is not cool. Pass it on, unquote. So at least they had fun with it. Yeah. Oh, man.
Nicely written.
It was.
Nicely written, Sharonville.
Yep.
Very nice.
All right, number 2. Well, that's going to leave a mark.
Okay.
Either he didn't know he was facing bulletproof glass, or he didn't quite know what happens when you throw something at bulletproof glass. Okay. Either way, a guy who broke into a Maryland takeout restaurant on September 20th was likely nursing a nasty head bump the next day.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah, NBC New York reports on the attempted burglary in Suitland, which, you know, the would-be burglar did manage the first step of getting into the eatery by smashing the front window and stepping into the venue's waiting area.
Okay.
All right, his next task, to break the window leading to the lockdown back room.
Okay.
As surveillance footage shows, that's when things hit a snag. The suspect threw what appears to be a brick 2 times at the window, which was made of bulletproof material.
Oh.
On the third try, as seen in the surveillance video that was taken, the brick once more bounces off the window, but this time it smacks the bad luck bandit right in the head.
Go figure.
He falls to his hands and knees in what was surely a good amount of pain. He stretched out on the ground for a few minutes before getting up and leaving. Cops are still looking for him. Karma's a bitch, isn't it?
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah. All right, number 3, and finally. Smile. The latest gleeful Facebook post from law enforcement comes to us by way of, well, yes, Florida.
We love Florida.
We do. They have the best crimes down there.
They have the best people there.
They do. Specifically, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
That brings to us the case of 18-year-old Chandler Ridge Carlisle.
Oh, 18.
Yeah. Who police say asked to borrow a man's phone while at a friend's house to call for a ride home, but forgot that borrowing actually involves returning the thing you have borrowed.
Oh, he took the phone with him.
Yep. Stung by the $600 loss, the victim reported the theft to police, reports the Palm Beach Post. Now, a deputy at first texted the stolen phone, identifying himself and demanding its return. He got nothing.
Oh.
When that didn't work, he made a FaceTime call to the phone expecting the same. But to his surprise, the stupid thief answered. The deputy quickly snapped a picture of the man who answered. Now Carlisle stands charges of grand theft.
Yeah, I mean, that is some really slick detective work going on there.
How stupid do you have to be?
Come on.
Look, it's a FaceTime. I'm going to answer it.
Come on.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
So there's your stupid criminals.
There you go.
Yep.
God love them. Bless their hearts.
I guess.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you don't know how much weed is legal.
Yeah. Jeez.
Not that we have the answers at Hitch to Homicide.
Wow.
All you got to do is go to hitchtahomicide.com where there's a pull-down menu. And while you're there, putting in your bless your her. You can also suggest a case or tell us about your brush with true crime.
Please do.
That is my amazing husband out there.
That's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitch to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.